Nintendo stuff. Welcome to Nintendo Stuff, the podcast stuffed to the brim with Nintendo. If you've been here recently, you may have found that the Break Room Arcade recently took over a completely different YouTube channel, but we're back. We're back here on Break Room Arcade. If you want to go watch our stream of Monster Hunter Rise on Good Vibes Gaming, that's still available. Speaking of Monster Hunter, that's going to be a big topic today, as Monster Hunter Rise's demo just came out 2 days ago now, and we've been playing a lot of that. But before we get into that, I need to introduce our panel today. I'm Brandon Miracle, host of Nintendo Stuff here on Break Room Arcade. I'm joined by Paul Anderson and Logan Daniel Welliver. I don't know. The middle name got in there, so there you go.
Wow, way to dox me. Way to let everybody know exactly who I am.
Look him up. But we're also joined by special guest Cosmic_Bones. The underscore is not silent. What's going on, man?
Not much, dude. Just happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have
Hot
you.
off the heels of this Rise, this Monster Rise we've been playing, huh?
Absolutely. So like I said, that's going to be a big topic today. A few other things have taken place, but I think all of us are itching to talk Monster Hunter, so we're going to just dive right into that. Monster Hunter Rise, I like it a lot.
It's a lot of fun.
Just throwing that out there.
Wow.
Yeah. Paul, I actually kind of want to start with you on this, because I know, you were kind of itching for a more classic-style Monster Hunter after World. So what are you thinking?
I actually went back and started playing World last night with my wife after I got done playing the demo.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to hop back into the demo this morning. I didn't really get a chance to jump back into it, but now my feelings are kind of torn, where I kind of wish that they had kind of retained more of World in this instead of kind of going into other directions with it and adding new mechanics, because it's just so hard to let go of everything I taught myself in the last iteration and learning how it now works.
Yeah, that's kind of how it always goes with Monster Hunter. You feel like you're riding with training wheels when you start a new game. If you go back and watch that stream on Good Vibes Gaming, you'll notice that we were just
not doing
trash for the first hour.
I have no doubt when I actually sit down with the full game and really learn the wire bug, I'll love it more than the grappling that they did in Iceborne. But for right now, the grappling mechanic in Iceborne was actually really intuitive.
Yeah.
So it's hard to going back to that and then oh, that's gone now.
Yeah, it's definitely a different step. I mean, another core mechanic that is missing is mounting, and we've had mounting since Monster Hunter 4. Now we have a new type of mounting in Wyvern riding, and I know there's some mixed feelings amongst the panel here about that, particularly from you, Logan, I think.
Yeah, I think I warmed up to it. And there's good and bad with it, right? It's something that I would do in the last few games is I would always be trying to get that height on them, and try to get build up that threshold, the mounting threshold, to try to mount the monsters and whatnot, because it just felt good, right?
Uh-huh.
And then for that to be just gone is a little strange, That being said, I did find myself doing that a lot in those last few games, right? And a lot of the times it was to what end, right? Because you build up the threshold so far, and then you have to do it again and again and again and again to actually make it happen. Whereas the way that you build the threshold to mount for the Wyvern riding in this game is different, right? And I do like that about this, right? That I'm not constantly trying to get height. Now, there is a lot more height, and you can kind of, jump in a way with the wire bugs in this game, which, change a lot of the meta, right? Especially if I'm I use switch axe a lot, and if I'm using the sword mode, your mobility in sword mode is really slow. You're about as fast as you are if you just have the great sword, right? And you have your weapon out. So being able to like, wire bug into the air and like throw yourself at the monster and then immediately just, hit R and pull it out into sword mode feels good. Like there's more varied ways to approach. And then, I feel like I'm more in the action too, because I'm not, again, trying to just get some height to jump in on it to build a meter. Now, there's still reason to kind of jump in on a monster. If you are doing that aerial attack, it's going to do a little bit more damage, just with that momentum and whatnot. But I feel more incentivized to really kind of just be engaged with the monster and not just do kind of this gimmicky thing trying to mount it.
I think this might be the most important step they've taken in Monster Hunter in regards to appealing to people who might not play like a slower, more deliberate kind of game like this. Like our mutual friend Santi has always expressed that he's been into like fast games where you can just kind of attack really quickly, games like Bayonetta, Devil May Cry. And because of the wire bug, he now feels like those kinds of options are now available to him. So he's a lot more excited about the game. So I think this is a positive step in that regard. It's definitely going to be new to a lot of veteran players who are more used to the slow, not so active role.
I think that's actually like one of the bigger selling points with the wire bug to me is that the reason I've used dual blades since 3 Ultimate, and I haven't stepped away from that because I just love the mobility of that weapon class and the ability to like move around really quickly and do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Now I can get that same like mobility, but out of those slower classes, and that's really exciting to me. This actually might be the first game where I consider stepping away from dual swords and doing something else.
Harley, I can see something burning in your face there.
They add like a mobility option that's not like tied to a specific like weapon set,
It's a global mobility.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool. Though, it is different when you have your weapons out, right? So something about the switch axe and some of these silk bind attacks.
Yeah.
Is one of them is just a straight attack. It's a good attack, does a lot of damage, and then builds up that meter so you can get that wyvern ride. And the second one is more of a mobility thing. So if I need to travel a good distance while having my weapon out, like say I need some distance because this monster is about to do some attack, that's a really great option to get away. In addition, it fills up a huge part of my sword gauge, which I need to activate sword mode, right?
Yeah.
And then it also gets me back into the action with sword, building up my meter for my amped state as well.
That seems to be a common element amongst like all the weapons, like you were saying, where abilities that were just tied to your weapons naturally before are now being baked into the Silkbind attacks, like take the Gunlance for instance. The primary Silkbind that we have in the demo, after you've used your Wyvern Fire, when you use that attack, it lets heat out of your guns to let the Wyvern Fire attack recharge quicker. So like they're incentivizing you to use these moves because they work in tandem with your weapon's base functionalities. But before we go deeper on that, Harley, I want to get your impressions on Rise so far.
Well, I like it. It's part of me because I started with 4 Ultimate with you guys, really, and it reminds me like I don't want to say it's the best of both worlds from World and Generations, because I fell out with Generations and I love World and Iceborne.
Mm-hmm.
But like we were talking about mobility earlier, and I'm a guy who, like our friend Santi, I like going fast. I like doing crazy stuff, which is why I was like Insect Glaive Bane for you for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's something that like bothers me a little bit about how they took what felt like just a staple new gameplay mechanic from then on and they turned it back into a gimmick for Rise. And it bothers me just a little bit, because I like the old mounting style a whole lot. And I like bouncing around and doing all this stuff. And yeah, the wire bug, it gives me momentum and it has me going all over the place. But part of it feels like it also stops momentum.
I can
And
kind of see what you're saying with that because, and this is something we talked about while we were playing, but for me, I feel like the Monster Hunter team wants to decentivize mounting, which is why they just outright removed the classic mounting system because, you know, like Logan was saying, we were over relying on it. There was a lot of jumping attacks. We were going for 2-3 mounts per hunt, and it puts the monster in a non-moving state for a long time. So that's a lot of DPS uptime, and they've taken that away from us. And I wonder if that's a step to try and make Monster Hunter slightly more difficult than it was in World. That said, we don't have the full game yet, so that remains to be seen. But I mean, I theorize that that's why they did that.
I mean, along with that, with the new mounting style, I don't think we've seen it at its best yet. Because I think in like a solo monster hunt, it's not going to be as interesting as like a multi-monster hunt, like that classic Raytheon or Thalos hunt.
Yeah.
Imagine that when you're actually hopping on the monsters and forcing them to do damage to each other. It's only going to get better. It's just right now we're not seeing it at its most optimal opportunity.
Yeah.
The other thing with that though is that one of the things I realized I missed was going back to that grapple mechanic that they introduced in Iceborne. Rather than like focusing the monster or like mounting the monster, what I found myself doing a lot is I need to cut this tail off. I'm gonna weaken the tail so that my attacks are more effective in that particular section of the monster. And that's something that like was so much more intuitive looking back than I realized at the time when they introduced it.
Yeah. I in the first like 30 minutes to an hour of playing the Rise demo, I found myself like autopiloting to try and claw shot the monsters, even though that we don't have that feature anymore. The same with slinger ammo. Just that entire system is gone. So they're definitely trying to separate this from World, which I think is good. You know, we don't want the same exact mechanics in every Monster Hunter. There are going to be mechanics that carry over from game to game, like climbing in Monster Hunter 4. That became a core element of Monster Hunter, just that verticality, and they're taking that to a new level here in Rise. So I feel like in the next iteration of Monster Hunter, we're going to see this cycle again, where some things are added to the formula, but things that were added in Rise are going to be taken away. Like, I'd be very surprised if the next mainline entry of Monster Hunter still has wire bugs in it. I feel like this is definitely a one and done kind of thing because it's so tied to the identity of this game.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, you could say the same thing about Underwater and Monster Hunter Tri, but you might also argue that they removed it because it was bad. But what do you guys think of the two fights that they have in the demo? Great Izuchi and Mizutsune.
Izuchi's a joke.
Yeah.
I think they needed that, like, I think they needed one in the middle that took a little bit longer than Itsuchi and then a little bit less time than Mitsune.
Yeah, Mizutsune feels like a hard fight when they label it as intermediate, and that might be sending the wrong message to new players, I think.
For sure. That fight takes a while and it's not easy at all.
Yeah,
the strange thing about like these demos is, you know, they give you these weapon sets, and
they're usually garbage.
Well, yeah, they're usually garbage, but I also don't anticipate that like everything here is in play or that the stats of these weapons and armor are going to be exactly the same.
Of course,
just given like the nature of like the demo and whatnot.
They're also hiding those details from us. You can't actually access your equipment status,
right? Because I don't think they're accurate, right? Yeah. They're not going to be accurate for the actual game. But you know, once you get to a certain point within the actual game and you build up your armor sets, yeah, Mizutsune is probably going to be like a more intermediate fight, like not that difficult.
Yeah, I mean, in Generations, Mizutsune was a low rank fight. That was the first time you fought it.
I was gonna say, I thought Mitsune was the first of the Fated Four you fought. Isn't that?
I'm pretty sure you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, like that was like the low tier monster, but I didn't play much Generations, so.
It is nice, speaking of Generations, that more elements from Generations are carrying forward. Like, the Fated Four aren't just locked to that game. That we first saw that with Glavenus being added to Monster Hunter World, and now we have Mizutsune returning, which makes me think that, was it Astalos? And I forget the other one's name.
Valstrax?
Valstrax?
The one was the jets for wings, right?
Oh, that's the 5th one that they added in Generations Ultimate.
Oh, I thought that was one of the 4.
That one was really rad.
The mammoth, the big mammoth.
Oh, the
yeah, I like the sudden. Wait a minute, he exists. Yeah, I think that they'll all show up in Monster Hunter Rise. They're trying to capture that Generations Ultimate audience with this game as well, and even more so, like Generations and Generations Ultimate had that attack specials system where you could bring 2 specials into battle with you. And here we have that baked into the core gameplay with Silkbind attacks. So they're definitely appealing to both crowds with this game, which I appreciate.
But in addition to that, all the move sets, at least as far as I'm concerned, that they added like in Iceborne, because they added like moves, at least I know, to the Switch Axe.
They added moves in base, and then they did it again in Iceborne.
Yeah. All those stuff are like present here in Rise, which is really fantastic.
There was one element from the Charge Blade that was added in Iceborne, which was promptly removed in Monster Hunter Rise. But we've heard of some data mines regarding some future attacks, and some of those moves might be upgraded or unlocked during the course of the game. I don't want to get too deep into that because I don't want to, bring up leaks here, but yeah,
well,
it is nice.
I bring that up partially because like there's a part of me that, after playing this demo, I want to go back to like a full game, and I didn't play a ton of Generations Ultimate, right? And so like there's a temptation to go back to it, but it also is like would grate at my brain because a lot of those options like are not in that game, right?
It's hard to go back.
Yeah, it'd be like going back to like the first game, right? Which I've never played the first game.
Please don't.
But I've heard some things about the first game, right?
You attack with the right stick.
Yeah. So I think I'm just gonna put myself into a cryogenic stasis for like 2.5 months.
Yeah.
Here's a hot take for you.
Uh-oh.
If we're bringing back old stuff, I'm ready to split the fan base. Bring back pickaxes and bring back whetstones that we have to craft.
Oh, you want the gathering part to be hard again?
I want people to go through the suffering that I did before World. That you were.
Oh, it's out of
spite.
You're like, I had to experience this. Now you have to experience it.
These people before World, they don't know. I mean, if they learned and they went back, good for them. But like the quality of life, oh my god.
There was nothing worse than trying to farm Fire Cell and Dragon Cell stones in Monster Hunter Tri and Tri Ultimate.
I could never use a pickaxe ever again, and you know what? I think I'd be okay with it.
I like how they still have it as like an item in World, but then it was just like infinite.
It's considered part of your utility belt, I think.
Yeah, it just happens.
Okay.
Yeah. And that I think that's still the case.
That is actually a feature in Rise that is
it.
really nice, where you just hit the stone once and then all of it's in your pocket.
They are really saving time. Like you hit it once and boom, you have everything. I don't know where
from Monster Hunter.
I don't know where I fall on that yet. No, I'm with you, Harley. I feel like I like that we get all the items at once, but part of me is going to be like this. It feels almost like they're undermining those elements of Monster Hunter a little bit, maybe too much.
I mean, hear me out on this. Every new game, you have to go through the same cycle of like gathering all this crap over and over again, like farming the honey, farming the blue mushrooms, farming the herbs, getting all the like ores and whatnot. Like, we've done it for how many different iterations between 3 and now. I don't want to do it again. I'm tired.
wanna
of it.
keep
It's my
doing
least
it.
favorite part.
How else am I gonna get my 1,200 hours of Monster Hunter Tri gameplay?
Maybe by
earned
actually
those
fighting the
burgers.
monsters.
Yeah,
I
I mean, I
earn all
still
that
like
stuff.
the gathering element's still here, right? You still
It is.
have to go to the thing. You have to find the thing on the map, and you have to gather it, right? This just takes away the fact that, like, oh, you know, generally you're walking up to these things while you're not fighting anything, and you gotta just, you know, hit it like a bunch of times, you know.
Logan, you
Now
actually
it's just like,
you reminded me of an element that when we first started playing seemed to be quite controversial amongst our group members, and that's how they've like vastly integrated endemic life into the gameplay. So like we're talking about gathering, and in the broad sense they've like undermined gathering, but also they have this endemic life you have to go searching for, which is something we're going to end up doing in every single hunt. So I don't know, maybe it's balancing itself out. And I mean, speaking on that, in past games, your health and your stamina meter would start at 100, and you could eat a max potion. Well, I guess you do eat it. Eat a max potion, eat a well-done steak, and you would get your health up to 150 and your stamina up to 150. That doesn't work anymore. It's not like that now. We have to go out into the wild and find these endemic lives that increase health, stamina, defense, offense, and they increase you by increments of +5. So you could be searching for them for several minutes before you're at max. The trade-off there is that it carries over beyond death. So if you die, you don't have to redo it. In past Monster Hunter games, when you died, your health would reset to base. So how does everyone feel about that?
well, I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal, especially considering, like, say for the stamina, right? You can increase your max stamina, but you still have to fill it with your well done meat. Your
Yeah,
well done
there's
steak,
that
right?
red portion of the meter.
Right. So that kind of still functions in the same way in that regard.
Yeah.
Other than that, like, okay, the health is definitely different. You know, our all mutual friend Joe, who was on the GVG stream with us, mentioned that maybe it might be an early game mechanic thing. And I
Yeah.
thought that had a lot of validity, and I actually appreciated it a lot more in that regard, in the sense that it might make the early game a lot more accessible, right? Especially in regards to the attack and the defense, right? So maybe
Oh,
you
yeah.
get a buff
That's true.
from the canteen, you know, when you're going into a hunt or something like that. But then maybe this additional stuff, because what I found myself doing during the demo, and you know, maybe it's different in the main game. I mean, they have a disclaimer right at the beginning when you boot up the demo that, hey, some stuff is going to differ in this demo than it is in the full release. So what I'm kind of anticipating is that, like, this will still be here, but there will be ways to skirt around it when, you know, you're actually playing, and especially as you get further into the game. But for the time being, what it does is it encourages you to explore, right?
Yeah.
Especially when these things are sometimes high up, you know, so you're climbing. Yeah, I remember after we had, you know, done both hunts, you know, probably 3 or 4 times at the very least. I started, like, kind of just going off on my own and searching around the map and then trying to get to the highest point, you know. And then you keep finding these endemic life, you know, and then you also find different gathering points that are positioned all around, you know, and then you start to gather why this is the subtitle of this game is Rise, you know, because they want you to explore and do all these things.
Well, I thought they were just want us to rise up.
I'm down with that too. But what it does do is it gives you that buff. It encourages you to explore. It encourages you to practice your movement and some of these other things you're doing with the wire bug. And then it kind of gives you a little bit of buff, because I had a lot easier time, with these armor and weapon sets after I had upgraded my attack and defense and health and stamina to max, and that feels very intentional at the very least for the demo. So and if that's the case, if that's really the case, and it's really just mainly going to benefit you early on in the game, that's going to make it a lot easier for newcomers to really get into the game. Like, it seems like these last two games, and I say last two games including Rise, they are making attempts to make Monster Hunter a lot more accessible. And in a lot of ways, it makes it easier, and that can be disappointing. But, some of the end game hunts in World are stupid hard,
Yeah.
So the difficulty is still there. And I think the
I
potential
still
for
have
that
Fatalis
kind of stuff.
nightmares.
Yeah. I think the potential for this game to kind of have the best of both worlds is greater than it was in World.
Going
Yeah.
off of that a little bit, one of the things that I honestly forgot about until just now is when it comes to like eating to get your health up, it doesn't always start off at like max. You have to gather ingredients and build up the canteen in order to get max health and max stamina with your consumption of your meal.
That's true.
So that actually, like Logan said, it might be an accessibility thing where it might be easier if they don't have the canteen for you to just go out and find it in the wild and then have it hold you through the whole fight. That being said, I kind of miss having the options of like just consuming a max potion, making my health maximum, and eating well done steak to get my stamina bar maxed out, or like just eating instead. So I'm hoping that they kind of play with those options more in the full game versus this demo.
And that said, like, we still don't know if there are going to be items that replace that functionality that you can consume mid-hunt. Like, maybe Max Potion, heals your maximum available HP, but maybe there's a new kind of potion, like a Super Max Potion that actually fills up the bar. And maybe those are, like, really hard to craft or obtain, so, like, they're really, they're rare.
I mean, max potions used to be hard to obtain.
I would argue that they still are.
That's really going to shake up the end game, though, if they do all this item changing. Because, I mean, when you play with a veteran hunter, you're going to be expected to have all these items, like the potions and all the stuff. And if you don't go in with like the bombs or whatever, people are going to be like, what are you doing? We're hunting one of the hardest monsters. Like, we need this. But, like, if they change up the items, the whole end game is going to change, too.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the learning experience too. Ideally, like, if we have these new players getting to the end game, they've picked up on this kind of stuff by the time they've gotten there. And if they don't, I would say that's not on them. It's on us for not passing that knowledge on when they're playing with us. You know what I mean? Like, I'd like to think Monster Hunter has a very healthy helper community, just because there's no reason not to help other players, because it actively hurts you if you don't. But online communities.
I think Rise actually might hurt it a little bit with going back a little bit. I guess is since let's talk about last night because it upset me greatly. We were going on a hunt with it was us. It was me, Logan, Brandon, and Joe, and we was hunting Rathian, I believe. And Logan was out exploring the beautiful world, and saying, "I can see you guys from up here," and we're hunting a Rathian and dying from it. Now, I like the incentive. I agree with all the points. It's saying, "Hey, explore. We're rising. We're going out. We're powering up." But at the same time, you're out there doing nothing, saying, "I'm staring at you." If you've played a Monster Hunter, you know that there are people who join games just to get the carving parts and weights. Now they have a whole big map to go around and wait for, and it's like that could mess with the community a little bit.
I would
They
hope.
get I guess.
I would hope that there's some kind of kick functionality in the event something like that happens. But I see your point because we've already seen it in action. But at the same time, we're a group of veteran hunters playing with a group of veteran hunters, so there's a little bit of wiggle room to goof off. That said, we had garbage gear, a 15-minute time limit, and only 2 out of the 4 hunters were fighting the monster.
I take my demo very seriously, Logan. You need to get down there next time.
Well, maybe you should have played more.
Oh, I'm
before
sorry.
You joined with somebody who like only has 14 tries left, and at least half of them were successes. They give you those 30 tries because they're like, oh, there's gonna be some of these, people in here who just can't. Maybe they don't know what they're doing or whatever. But then you got us pros in here who are like, okay, maybe we'll only die like a third of the time.
If you're in the chat and you're getting close to zeroing out on your plays, you can delete your save data for the demo and you'll get your tries back. Just throwing that
I
out
heard
there.
about that.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yo, we need to talk about what my biggest hope for Rise is the monster design and choices and the differences between that and World, because I'm gonna be real with you. World's monsters kind of got boring after a while, like design wise, and I like them. I like Nergigante. He's like they appeal to the Western audience, and they grow their stuff, right? They grew their audience big, and it was all like metal. Like we got Anjanath, who's the Tyrannosaurus Rex with the fan on his face, right? We got Toby Kadachi, who's like a flying scroll scales. One thing that I've looked at so far with the new release, like monsters, is that like it's the old school type where it has like imagination to it, and it's kind of a bit more fun.
They're leaning into the fantasy a bit more.
Yeah, I kind of that's kind of like the biggest reason I like Monster Hunter is because of the really weird monster designs. I mean, I don't, in the last trailer, we got to see the Oni Ice Blade guy.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's super cool. And you know what? I want to see more of that because we went from having a dragon with jets for wings to several T-Rexes, and then we need to bounce back from that, which I think it's clear what we're doing, and that's what I'm most excited about for Rise.
Oh, go ahead.
It leaves all these opportunities open, because that means it's going to be really dope armor. It's going to be really better weapon design. Please, dear God. But unfortunately, someone already showed a screenshot in the trailer, and I think, in the trailer, the one they showed the I always forget his name. The egg guy. He carries the what's the dodo's name?
Kuliyaku.
Unfortunately, his weapon design is still the same. So World's weapon designs are going to be boring still, and the ones that transferred over, which is really, really unfortunate, because I was hoping that this team would have taken and kind of had some fun with it.
I can kind of forgive like the monsters from World that are carrying over their stuff, maybe not changing as much, as long as the new monsters, and there seems to be plenty of them so far, as long as their stuff is good and the classic monsters, we revert to their older designs. I think I think we'll be in a good place. Like we look at Royal Ludroth and the armor set for that. I wouldn't want
his armor to change.
No, I would never want that to change. It's ugly, but I love it because it's ugly.
It's so bad.
And then there's the hammer, which is literally just the hood from the armor set on a stick. I'm here for it. That's the kind of stuff I want. So
we broke it off fair and square. We deserve to just slap it on a stick if that's what we want to do.
So yeah, we are leaning back that direction. I've been really impressed with the armor and weapon designs that are in the demo specifically. I adore the armor set for the bow and the armor set that comes with the charge blade. They look really cool. So I'm happy we're kind of going back that direction, because that was like the one element of Monster Hunter that was kind of lost in World. Despite
fashion element.
Yeah, it's really important, actually.
It's
it
the
turns
end
out.
game. The end game is the fashion element. I want to look cool or look ridiculous, not look normal. I don't know how they pulled that off. That's why I'm saying if you haven't seen it still yet, and I know I told you guys about it, the Magnum Malo Amiibo armor, the ones that come with the three separate ones.
Are those layered?
Yeah, it's just layered.
Okay.
It might be just layered, but it looks so cool. It's so vibrant and imaginative and like ninja, and it fits the theme.
Hear me out,
It's
though.
like it's coming back. The fashion's here.
I married a fashion hunter, and I have to stop what I'm doing. I have to stop all of my progression to help her fight this one monster like 500 times so she can get its armor. There is a downside to being a fashion hunter. I support it. I'm here for it. Like, if you want to look fabulous, go for it. But
that's where all the
Paul
hours
said,
come from,
"I'm
is the
here
fashion.
for it, but I don't want to be here for it."
I don't want to be.
I'm here for it, but not when I have to work for it.
he's blanking out Morse code SOS with his eyes right now.
I'm trying my best. Please help me, guys. Please.
So the next demo, this first demo was also leaked in the big Capcom leak earlier this, I don't know, it was late last year. So there's another demo that got leaked that will be coming out sometime in March. We don't know if it'll be before or after the game's launch, but regardless, it'll be close to the game's launch. So the next time we're playing Monster Hunter Rise with new content is very likely just going to be the end game, or like the final version of the game. But so far, I'm really excited. I'm still playing the demo, which is always a good sign. I want to keep playing it, trying out all the weapon classes, because there's new things going on with them, such as gyro controls, which I know someone here hates on real hard. I'm looking down at you right now, Harley.
Sorry, it's just a mistake.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do have to ask, why does Monster Hunter need gyro controls? At the same time, I have the option to not use them, so I'm not gonna hate on someone.
Okay,
There's
All right.
3 ranged
gonna say
weapons. Excuse me.
Okay,
about to
that makes
say-
valid points.
literally, here's how it works, right? Gyro controls are an option, right? Those who like them can use them. Those who don't have to. And honestly,
That's fine.
I'm glad they're here. I think gyro controls should be in any game that they can be in as an option, at the very least. I think if it's a first-person shooter, I think there should be options for at the very least supplementary like gyro control.
Watch
Like,
out,
I
Harley.
just
I'm
think
gonna
it's a great
right-click
idea.
on you real quick and just drop your user volume to 0.
I mean, just to backtrack to my earlier comments, I forgot there were ranged weapons in this game. So now there's a good precedent for it. I'm sorry. You're on your own, Harley.
You can also use it for the wire bug, which I found to be fairly useful. But yeah, they are toggleable. So if it's something you like, the option's there, and if it's something you don't like for whatever reason, Harley,
Maybe you should just get good.
you can turn them off. Excuse me.
Maybe.
I mean, you don't even have to turn them off. They're off by default.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they should be deleted by default. Maybe you should just go back to the old school days when we used analog sticks.
This is why Harley doesn't direct any game, because he
Oh, okay,
totally just,
because
like,
they'd be good.
crash
you're
and
afraid
burn any
good
project.
things. Okay. All right, you'll see. The only good motion or any kind of gyro control was in ARMS, and that's it. That's all. Forgive.
That's not the game I was expecting you to say.
I love ARMS. To
I
death.
love ARMS
Say
too.
Splatoon.
I thought it was Beyblade, the video game.
Oh, but, I'll give Beyblade an excuse too.
Actually,
I'll do that.
I gotta give it up to Bakugan on Wii. My favorite part was throwing the marble, because you had to waggle the remote to do it. As James Diaz says, the final monster, gyro controls incarnate.
Oh, no. Well, at least have fun with the final monster killing it over and over again.
So we got a couple other things to talk about before we wrap up here.
Oh.
We've been going 40 straight minutes on Monster Hunter, I think.
I
Something like
got
that.
an hour of gyro control ranting to go on still. I don't know what you're
I
talking
mean, just
about.
to throw back to our first ever podcast where we talked about Monster Hunter for I think like an hour and a half.
Oh, we did, didn't we? Yeah.
We could have done way worse.
So, one thing, and this is actually kind of related to Monster Hunter a little bit, is performance of Nintendo Switch. The game is running up to 30 frames per second, not quite locked, and the resolution is just a little higher than 720p docked mode and sub 720p in handheld mode. That said, there have been a lot of rumors about a Switch Pro. We've talked about it on this show many times.
We might want one.
Yeah. But there has recently been a firmware update on the Nintendo Switch, and a well-known data miner known as, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, Cirez M, Scires M, said that there is some stuff related to the Switch Pro in the current firmware update. I'm reading this off of my Nintendo News. The latest firmware update for Switch included details surrounding a Switch Pro allegedly codenamed Aula. According to the data miner's findings, the next Nintendo Switch will house the same Mariko SoC chip that's in the current Switch Lite, and now in the improved Nintendo Switch model that has improved battery life. Cirez M explains that although the Switch Pro has the same chip, it will operate at a higher clock speed and be capable of some improved visuals and performance. The firmware also points towards support for the Realtek chip, and this is how Nintendo will achieve 4K resolution, but only while the console is docked. And it also looks like the new model will have an OLED screen, which is a huge upgrade from what we have currently. So, I mean, what's your take on all of this? I think a data mine is pretty factual because they're preparing, for this to come out in the future. But based on what we know, are you pleased with the direction this is taking?
I see, this seems like the way that Nintendo would do it, right?
Yeah.
Like a mid-life cycle upgrade, something that's kind of just gonna make up for a lot of the bottlenecks that on the current Switch. Redesigning it so they can up the clock speed of the chip makes sense. Yeah, so I could see a lot of these games be more consistently like bring them up to like 60 FPS or a stable 30 FPS, and then up, the resolution more handily to like 720 and 900, and just have like a boost of performance for like pretty much every game.
I mean, we also have evidence of this too, like with Digital Foundry. Through specific back-end means, they have been able to overclock the Switch's current clock speed and get certain games running at higher resolutions and locked frame rates. I think they had The Witcher 3 running at 60 frames per second. Not in 1080p resolution, mind you, but they still increased it. So I think there's a lot possible from this. I mean, like with the new Nintendo 3DS, I think the only thing that changed was an increased clock speed of the current chipset. But the big thing for me here is using a Realtek chip to achieve 4K resolution in docked mode. I don't know if that is supposed to be internal or is that going to be a specialized dock. I mean, regardless, if they're going to output 4K resolution, they're going to have to release a new dock because the current dock doesn't support it.
I thought when I was reading through all that information, they did kind of mention it being like a specialized dock for that. Or it was more of a hypothetical or like speculation. That's the word. But I think that was part of it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes the most sense to me. Because I just don't know, like, and I'm no engineer, mind you, but I don't know how you'd fit that into the current, like, size and shape of the Switch. Because as it stands, I don't anticipate that's going to change.
One of the things that makes the most sense to me is they've always talked about like making it like modular, and you can always like expand by adding this, and like, it was very popular back in the day. if you have this peripheral that you use to connect it to your TV and you could add technology to kind of beef it up, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, they've used that kind of idea before with the Super Nintendo, where instead of putting new hardware in the system, they started putting new hardware in the game cartridges, like with the Super FX chip and the Super FX 2. That allowed the Super Nintendo to output 3D graphics in games like Yoshi's Island and Star Fox. So, I mean, the precedent's there, and I'm certainly interested in seeing how it'll go.
Seeing is how much they've like pushed this poor console. Like, I think it's a good time to add a beefier model into the roster and let us improve our quality of games.
As
Not much,
disappointing
but
as disappointing as it is to see, as Conman mentioned, the limits of the hardware starting to show. We're hitting that point where they can't just port every game to Switch now because the amount of concessions that they have to make to get it to work are becoming too great. So we're at that critical point, especially with the release of the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, and this new generation of GPUs available for PCs, that they're going to have to do something in order to continue to offer the third-party support that we haven't had since the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, and then not to mention that they've already said that we're about at the halfway point for the Switch's life cycle, right? Which would put it around 3.5, 4 years. So say 7, 8 years is when they stop producing the Switch. That implies, its successor and not just another revision, right? So I think we're due for a revision. Obviously, there's been a lot of rumors, and obviously this firmware update, and I feel like we're right. We're right there, right? That we're gonna get what we're pretty much gonna be playing on for the next 3 years, before they announce and are ready to release the Switch successor, which I'm just anticipating is going to be the Switch 2, right, at this point.
Switch 2.
And or at the very least, like
Switch with two eyes.
Yeah,
Super
Switch.
Switch.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's gonna be called something real dumb. They went from Wii to Wii
It's
U.
gonna
What do you
be
think
it's
they're
gonna
do
be
with Switch?
Switch, right, with a capital W and 2 eyes, right? And then the Switch U, and so on.
New
But,
Switch U Plus.
I really hope it's not New Switch. Please don't call it that.
Oh, let's go.
Like
but yeah,
Super
like,
Switch would have been.
we're at that
yeah.
point
Yeah.
where we could probably use something to boost the performance of a lot of these games, and just give us that much better of an experience. And then maybe also a drift-free revision of the Joy-Con.
The stone that broke the camel's back for me was Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity. A first-party game released in such a sorry state on the Nintendo Switch that the Nintendo I know from the last 20 years would not just release a game in that garbage of a state. That said, it works well enough, but you can't play co-op without it just being absolute garbage. So
I mean, maybe part of that is
It's that
they
bad, huh?
yeah,
do something with developing that we don't.
that's
Like
what I'm
a
getting
pro
at.
model.
Yeah. So like the one reason I think that they're doing that, like Paul said, is that they were anticipating the next version of the Switch to come out soon, and then they can use this game as their poster child. They're like, look how much better Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity runs on Switch Pro rather than
Because it's Cyberpunk on this.
I think that they're waiting for Breath of the Wild too. I think that's what's gonna happen. Because
yeah.
if I remember correctly, Breath of the Wild also has some slight issues performance-wise.
Yeah, it did.
Especially handheld mode, and that was like the game everyone got a Switch for. So the Switch 2, the Switch U, the Switch Pro Plus, whatever it's going to be called, once Breath of the Wild 2 gets released, like that's what it's going to come with. That's it has to, because if you messed up another Zelda, what are you doing, Nintendo?
Well, it's not like they messed up Zelda.
I mean,
just,
Breath of the Wild
you know.
was at least like playable and serviceable. I would argue Age of Calamity was neither of those things. but I do agree that Breath of the Wild 2, that's the key point to introduce something like this. Previously, I had surmised that maybe the Switch Pro would come out alongside Monster Hunter Rise, and Monster Hunter would be the showpiece. We're getting close to that release date, and Nintendo hasn't said much. That said, they do often wait until right before launch to reveal new hardware, so it still could happen. But at this point, I have to agree with somebody I saw in the GVG chat during our stream that said that the expansion for Monster Hunter Rise is going to launch right around when Breath of the Wild 2 comes out, and that's when they're going to target the Switch Pro launch. I think that's your key timing, because by then, if the leaks are true, Monster Hunter Rise will be making its way to PC, and they don't want the PC version to sit next to the Switch version and have the Switch version just look like mud. They're going to want it to look better. So I think there's some validity to that claim. But once again, it remains to be seen. They denied the 3DS XL up until the day before they announced it. Literally the day before they announced it, they were like, oh, no such thing's happening. And the next day, there it is. So, yeah, it could happen at any moment. I had another story, and I seem to have lost it. Oh, yes. Thank you. Recently, Nintendo has acquired Next Level Games, which you might know as the developer of the Mario Strikers series, as well as Luigi's Mansion 3. All three games that I really like, as well as Punch-Out on Wii. How could I forget that? That's one of the best games they've ever put out, if you ask me. I didn't know this wasn't already the case, if I'm being honest with you, so...
That was my exact reaction.
Yeah. So to me, it just makes sense that this is happening. They're already developing, like, core first-party IP games for Nintendo, and now they're going to be able to do that with probably a bigger team and more money. So I would hope we'll see even better projects out of them coming from this.
New Punch-Out.
Please.
I don't want a new Punch-Out.
Give me a third Strikers.
I also would like a new Strikers game. I think they like hammered down on Next Level Games for the way they depicted the Mario cast in those games, for being a little like gritty, ultra violent. But yeah, I would be so down for another entry in that series. But yeah, I think this is a good call. It just makes sense. It doesn't seem to me like Next Level is working on anything that wasn't a Nintendo property. And when you're given the keys to Princess Peach's castle, you don't turn that away, if you ask me. That's a gold mine of possibilities. So good for Next Level. I hope the next projects out of them are strong, and I look forward to seeing what's next. I think we had one more story.
Yep. It was that Microsoft.
What was it, 20 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
And apparently they like laughed in their faces during the entire meeting. Like, I get it. You're Microsoft, you're first getting into the games business, and you're like, you know what? Who's the king of the games business right now? It's Nintendo. Let's hook up with Nintendo. Let's make something great. And Nintendo's like, excuse me? Who the heck are you?
The absolute huevos on Microsoft for that one.
Yeah.
That was their only chance to getting Master Chief in Smash, though, by the way. That was it.
Oh, you don't think there's an opportunity still?
No, there's not.
We have Minecraft Steve in Smash Brothers and Banjo-Kazooie right now. That's two Microsoft reps.
Or do they like him enough for a third?
You're getting
Finish the
Jonesy,
fight,
bud.
Nintendo. Finish the
So,
fight. Don't give me Jonesy. Stop.
I appreciate this story, especially in relation to the last one, and also in relation to the recent string of Microsoft acquisitions. Because one, if anybody knows me, you know how I feel about acquisitions in general and big business and whatnot. But that being said, I much more appreciate what is happening between Next Level and Nintendo as opposed to Microsoft just throwing money at things to try to fix things, right? I think Microsoft has, obviously a lot of money at its disposal. So it just tries to craft these things into something massive through throwing money at things, right? Whereas Nintendo is much, much more concerned about like, okay, is this really going to be a good fit, for what we're going for? And obviously, like Next Level has been making Nintendo properties for quite some time at this point, right?
Yeah.
And more so in increasing frequency in the last few years. So really building up that relationship and saying like, okay, this company really knows what it's doing. It's got a lot of value. Okay, we're gonna purchase this. Yeah, I think it's great. It's fantastic.
I want to point out James Diaz's last comment in our chat really quick. Both Kanye and Microsoft have something in common now, being rejected by Nintendo. I really want to know what Kanye West's game pitch to Nintendo was, because, it takes a lot of gall to go to Nintendo HQ as a music producer with no game experience and being like, I want to make a video game with you. And that's not a knock on Kanye West, because I think he's got a lot of talent. Go ahead.
If I remember correctly, there was a time where he wanted to make video games in the past. I think one specifically about his mother. It might have also been a joke that I took too seriously. I know it was joked on, but there was a video game in the past that he had ideas for, and he's talked about it in the past because I'm a fan of Kanye, despite things. But if it was for Nintendo, then I don't know what that man would have done. He might have had something else entirely in mind for Mario, which would have been great.
He went up to Reggie Fils-Aimé and gave this pitch, as I understand it. And Reggie kind of had to just talk him down without being too mean about it. Because, Kanye sees himself as an auteur, and I think in a lot of ways he is. So, making a video game is a logical step. But, you can't just go up to Nintendo when their standard of quality is so insanely high. They have expectations, and you better be ready to meet them. So, I think the writing was on the wall before that conversation even started. So, sorry, Kanye. If you make a game in the future, hopefully it's good, but...
Send us a review copy.
Yeah, send us a review copy. We'll review it for you. James says, I want to know Reggie's thought process when he had to speak to him. It probably wasn't a very comfortable conversation. I'll just say that.
A lot of long, awkward pauses.
Yeah. So given that, I think we're at the end of this week's Nintendo Stuff podcast. But before we go, Cosmic_Bones, the underscore is not silent. You have to tell us where people can find you.
That's a really long handle.
Hello. It's me, Cosmic_Bones. The underscore isn't silent. You can find me on Twitter at the Cosmic Bones. And on YouTube, you can just search Cosmic_Bones and you'll find videos that I make and put on the internet. If you watch it, much love. My last video was about Halo 3 and the memories it gave me. Very personal story. I felt that I got across very well and it was fun. Yeah.
All right, so make sure you guys go do that. Subscribe to his channel. Follow him on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Merrowleaf_. The underscore is not silent. You can follow Paul at Gunnysaurus, and you can follow Logan at LoggyDubs. You can follow us as a collective at Breakroom Arcade. You can join our Discord server. There's a link to that below. You can keep up with the conversation. We're always in there. We've been playing a lot of Monster Hunter the last couple days. There's usually some Smash matches going on. So if you want to get involved, make sure to do that. It's free, no cost to you. But if you do want to help support us, we have a Patreon as well. You can support us for as little as $1 a month. If you're new here, like and subscribe. And we will see you guys next week for episode 79 of Nintendo Stuff. We've done a lot of podcasts over here.
Wow.
Yeah, we're really making it happen. But until then, we will talk to you later. Don't break your backs. Break in the games. But for now, break time is over.